How's everybody doing?
Amazing!
Let's raise the roof. Let's hear you guys scream and yell. All right, I like it. I like it. So you guys are here for the auction, right? Yeah, that wasn't this one. So this is the 3D printing transformers, if you haven't figured that out by this table over here. And that's what we're going to talk about today. My name is Mike. My company is Half the Battle Toys, if you've heard of that. I do a lot of prototyping, and I have some new products out, these little micro transformers. We have some very, very fresh into the digital world in here, and then we have some people that are very good at 3D printing and have been doing that for a while, and cosplay. So, and you guys into cosplay out there? All right. Got 5 of you. That's good. That's good. So, I would give you some slides to show you, but apparently Apple products and this thing don't get along. So we're just going to talk about it today. How many of you guys know anything about 3D printing? Raise your hands. All right. Good amount of you. Now, out of all those, how many have a 3D printer? All right. Now, how many of you guys know what FDM stands for? Got one guy. What is it?
Oh my God. Oh, you mean what it actually stands for?
Yeah.
I know what it is.
Okay. So FDM is the printer that prints these guys over here and these Voltron pieces. FDM stands for Fused Deposition Modeling. Just a little history on 3D printing. I've been 3D printing since 2009. The very first desktop 3D printer that ever came out was from MakerBot. It was called the Thingomatic. It was a kit that you had to buy from Kickstarter. It was all made of laser-cut wood pieces and a finagle of wires that somehow worked into an Arduino kit that you could use for 3D printing. The bed size was about that big. So, yeah, it was my first, introduction into this digital world. I was already kind of half sculpting in my iPad, and I was able to take one of my sculpts, transfer it into an STL, and print it, and it changed my life. That's when it started for me to do cosplay, and I started doing a lot of 3D printing and design stuff for cosplay, and then it's kind of moved into the action figure world, which is kind of where we're at today. How many of you guys know what SLA printing is? No hands. Got a guy back there. What is it? Resin? Yes. All right, you're good. So this is what is considered to be resin printing. Resin printing is it's not new, it's been around forever, but through technology and old technology with new technology built into it, we're able to have them in a desktop format. The first company to ever come out with a desktop version of that was Formlabs, and they used a Blu-ray disc laser projector to write the information. Essentially what resin does is it's a UV curable resin. It goes into a vat, and then with the laser, it writes the information. If it's what we have now is called MSLA, which is mask stereolithography, it uses an actual mask of an LCD screen, and it shines a UV light up through it and cures it one layer at a time, and then peels it off the bottom and prints it upside down. I had a lovely video to show you, but you'll just have to use your imagination. So that's kind of where we're at with 3D printing, and things have gone haywire in the last 5 years or so with the pricing of 3D printing. The printers that you can buy, you can get them for under a couple $100 now for both resin and FDM printers, and large format now is becoming even easier to get your hands on. What size is your printer that prints these guys?
It's a 256 cube. It's a Bamboo Lab PS1.
Oh, okay. All right. The PS. Oh, really? Okay.
P1S, yeah.
All right. So it's roughly an 8-inch by 8-inch build plate. So we have Elegoo just came out with a new one that's 48 inches by 48 inches.
800 millimeters cubed.
Yeah, 800 millimeters cubed. It's called the Elegoo Orange Max or something like that. It takes up a huge amount of space. Like if you live in an apartment, don't buy that printer. Resin printers can start as small as like a 6-inch screen to what I have now, which is a 16-inch screen. So I can print full helmets in one shot now on the resin printer. We used to always do them through FDM, up until this point, so it's getting easier to come by. So that's it for me. Why don't you guys, let's go down the line and introduce yourselves.
I'm Zev. I run Z3D Prints. I've been 3D printing for 9 or 10 years, and that's it.
Okay. What do you print?
What do I print?
What do you do?
Okay. I print primarily costumes and cosplay accessories, and with a healthy mix of statues and practical prints here and there. I have been printing for 9 or 10 years, and I do a combination of FDM plastic printing and resin SLA printing, and try my best to, either way you go, you can sand things. I try to make things look nice. You can sand them smooth and make them look the same with a bit of work, even though they print with different levels of detail. So I try to get either a high level of detail over time or a quick print like some of these here.
I can help you with that too. All right, next.
Hello, I'm Elena, and
You got some fans out there.
I'm here to represent all the newbies new to the field who are just trying to migrate from making 3D art just to practice your skills and transforming this 3D art into something that can actually be printed. I'm here to speak about the mistakes that I've made along the journey and to show you that, it's not that hard to try, fail, and try again until you figure out how to make this something exist in reality.
Trial by fire.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, awesome.
My name is Alvin Reyes. I'm a marketing advertising guy. And I just got back into Transformers. I actually lost interest in Transformers years ago, and I found out that there's like MPs and all this toy maker stuff. I bought a 3D printer, got back into it, and then I found these two guys, and I just started 3D printing it. I was like, I'm gonna just go huge on these guys. So this one took about 2 months to print out. This one took about 1 month to print out.
Who's the guy?
Colin and Daryl, these are the two designers from Canada and Europe. They are the original designers of these STLs or these models, and I just know how to print out. I don't know how to design anything.
It's a 3D toy maker, right?
Toy Maker, yeah.
Yeah.
Toy Maker
3D?
3D, yeah, correct. But yeah, it's pretty cheap. Metroplex, he was like $50. And then this guy, I think he's probably like around $50 too, just to get the STL. So I recommend buying a 3D printer for like $700. I use a Bamboo P1S. It's all auto-calibrated. You don't have to deal with any of the troubleshooting. That's what I loved about it. Because,
Same.
yeah, I was actually building out a 3D Mendelmax a couple years ago from scratch, and I hated the calibration. So that was just like a turn-off for me. And then I just put it aside, gave up, and then when I found out there's auto-calibrating printers, that got me back into it.
Cool.
So now I just love 3D printing. So I have a Metro Titan that's like 5 foot tall. That's almost done. And then
He's a madman.
Yeah. Unicron is next, 5 foot Metro Fortress Maximus, and the Scorponok. Those are going to be 5 footers next.
Amazing, amazing. I just bought that printer, actually. That's probably the 6th FDM printer that I've owned, and I bought it specifically for that because as somebody who does regular production on stuff, I don't have time to fix a printer. How many of you guys have that problem with your printers? Yeah, about half of you. Okay, good. So when printing started for desktop, it was a hobby. Like, people weren't really making money off of it and things like that back in the day. because of the fact that it was so early on, like you spent just as much time fixing your printer as you did printing on your printer. And that has gone leaps and bounds since then. I've probably spent $10,000 in printers in the last 10 years to finally get this one that came out, which is the Bamboo Labs PS1. I swear by that thing now. I've only had it, these guys were all printed on that. I haven't had a single issue with the exception of like one clog when it ran out of filament that I had to, go back through. But it told me, it sends me a message on my phone, says, you got a clog, go fix it. I'm like, okay, but I'm in California. All right, fine. So it'll wait for me until I get home to fix the problem. Not that I would actually be printing stuff while I'm here in California. I'm from Arizona, by the way, so it's kind of a long, quick drive to get over there and fix something. But yeah, throughout the years, just different stuff has come out. As we've accumulated different types of printers, resin came in and has kind of taken over the next level of what we're going to be looking at for 3D printers. How many of you guys are interested in like minifigures for tabletop gaming? All right. So that's where that started, especially during the pandemic, because we couldn't go anywhere, but we could get Amazon to deliver something to our house. And in the process of that, I started Half the Battle Toys because I couldn't drive for Lyft anymore. The maker spaces in school was all closed, so I had to figure out something. And I got into the resin printing just so that I could print minifigures and develop some other stuff that uses very high detail. So that's the difference between the FDM you get for big stuff like this. It looks great, but you can still see the line quality in it. Depending on the printer that you have too, the lines are better. The new P1S, the lines are like really great, like almost indistinguishable. But you can see these little ones down here, the amount of detail that you can get out of a tiny printer. This is one of my products. You guys will be able to see this on the floor. Art by Rachel, when you stop by her booth. I'll have these over there. These are nanobots. I broke a world record, which Guinness Book of World Records just told me today that they can't prove the record, so they're not going to give me the title, whatever. But Bumblebee is 21 millimeters tall, has 10 points of articulation, and that can only be done through resin printing. It cannot be done through injection molding because the parts are just too small. So, yeah. Thank you. So, through my experiences, I started out as a designer early on, got away from that, started doing graphic design, and then moved back into 3D design when they started making stuff for the iPad, which is great, which is something that we'll talk about. How many of you guys have an iPad? All right. So I recommend two programs if you want to get into this. One of them is Nomad Sculpt. So hopefully you're taking notes. There'll be a test at the end. No, just kidding. And the other one is Shaper without the E. Shaper 3D. Shaper 3D is CAD-based modeling. So if you're familiar with Fusion 360, anything like that, it uses mathematical equations to make up your parts. It's kind of like the difference between Photoshop and Illustrator, if anybody understands that. Photoshop is made of pixels. Illustrator uses a line and a node, and it calculates the distance between it, no matter how, with radius and all of that stuff, and that's what CAD-based modeling programs use. What is it? ZBrush is what's comparable to Nomad Sculpt, and it's basically like a digital sculpting program. It's fantastic. So, how many of you guys are designers out there? I'm sure there's a few of you guys. Okay. 3D or 2D? Raise your hands. All right. Does anybody do like anything in like Procreate or like Photoshop, Illustrator? Okay, now we're starting to get a few more hands. Okay, good. So, if you've got the idea behind 2D, you'll get the idea behind 3D. I would highly suggest using Nomad. I'm going to segue. And why don't you talk about your experiences with Nomad?
Right.
You You can pull that closer.
Thank you. I first learned of Nomad by watching YouTube, and I came across several channels that would show making these tiny little vines on a mask. And I thought, oh my goodness, that is incredible. This guy just took a pen and dragged it across the screen, and there it is, a perfectly, well done vine. I downloaded the app and I started tinkering with it. I started trying to figure out how to make something look organic, how to make something look more angular, more Transformers-y. And it has opened so many horizons to me because it has finally enabled me to bring together some designs that I couldn't bring together in 2D. It has allowed me to create some patterns, some intricate patterns on cuffs, on wings. It was really interesting to figure out the distinction between making a shape out of smaller shapes and making a shape by just using clay brush or using depression movement to bring up or bring down certain pieces to align into a pattern. And just figuring out the fact that there is this imaginary piece of clay inside of your tablet that you can manipulate was incredible. It was such an amazing feeling.
How long have you been doing that?
I have been doing that for a little over a year.
Okay.
My first project took me 50 hours. I tried to make a seeker that would vaguely resemble Vector Prime. I was trying to redesign Safeguard. And the journey that it took to figure out that, no, I can look at Vector Prime and I can see all those angular designs on him and all those little cogs. But there is no way I can make up each tiny fold by using a separate figure in Nomad. I would just go insane. So I had to figure out a way to mask certain parts, to get a little creative with cutting off edges, with figuring out how to bring this thing together. And at some point, you just wake up from, this creative slumber, and it's 4 a.m., and there's just this thing on the iPad in front of you that is now existing.
Has anybody out there sculpted with clay or Play-Doh or anything? Okay, so think of that. Think of Play-Doh as you're messing around with it in your hands. You're taking your finger and scraping across it to get an indent, or pushing your finger to one side to build up space on the other side. That's what she's talking about. That's what you can do in the iPad or in digital format for sculpting with ZBrush or Nomad Sculpt.
And if you want to get really fancy with it, there are virtual reality apps like Gravity Sketch and Tilt Brush where you literally are sculpting with clay with digital tools.
Yep.
And that is mind-blowing.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. I got a chance to do that early on when the Oculus Rift first came out.
Yeah.
So I want to segue a little bit to not everybody can 3D design, am I right? Okay. Yeah. So I know, Alvin, you're not a 3D designer.
Nope.
You just know 3D printing really well.
Yeah, I just picked it up pretty quickly.
Okay. So, how did you find out about these files and where to get stuff to start 3D printing?
I'm in a couple of Transformers Facebook groups, about 4 of them, 3D printing, the displays, and Generation 1 fan groups. And then I started learning about all the different classes. I'm an MP guy. And then I saw the Titans. I was like,
in case you don't know, that's Masterpiece. I think you all know that, right? Okay.
And then I started learning about the Titans, and then I didn't even know what TFcon was, because I'm just a season 1 fan.
Yeah.
So I started the Metroplex, oh, these are pretty cool. So I saw the toy version, the Hasbro's, the 2-foot tall versions. Yeah. I was like, I want to go big on these. And so I started Googling it, and then I found Toymaker 3D. And then I found one of the guys who actually designed Metroplex, who sold these STL files. So I just asked, I was like, hey, how tall is the 3D print by itself. He says about like 40 inches tall. I was like, okay, great. So I did that, got him printed like a good 2 months because like that's my first project. Failed a lot. It was like only like $600 for the whole roll of filaments.
How much?
$600 total to make
Okay.
that.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. So this one right here, this is Toymaker 3D. It's Mech Godzilla. And the guy, he got permission to actually modify him to make him look like TFcon.
Okay.
And then the other one's like, I didn't like the tail, so I found a 3D model designer. I was like, hey, I just gave him a graphic picture of the tail design. I was like, hey, can you do this, but make the ball joint fit? And he did that. So it's just like a little, you know.
So you had to hire somebody to model out a couple pieces.
Right, because I don't know how to design.
Right, okay.
I know how to print. So I did that, and it's just, before last night, when I was test fitting this, the last 2 pieces of the tail broke off. And it would take about 24 hours just to reprint it, which I didn't have time. And I totally forgot I actually had a 3D pen. So I just started plastic welding the ball joint back in, and it's
Anybody
strong.
messed with those before? The 3D pens?
It's a lifesaver.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that thing saved my butt last night, having a 3D pen, and here it is now. I was able to show it off, show off the work.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah. Yeah, he came in with a cart
Yeah.
with these guys. So hopefully we'll be able to display these out on the floor at some point, but
Yeah.
waiting to hear back from that.
Yeah.
So another thing that printer does that we haven't really talked about, these Voltron lions that you see here, I didn't get to print the whole thing because this is another issue. Those were printed in 4-color process. So the silver, the blue, the yellow, the red on the blue lion were all printed within that print. So it uses 4 different filaments, and it swaps them out for each different color that it needs to print for each layer. It's an amazing new thing. I'm very excited about it. This program, you can actually hook up 4 more of those. They call it an AMS system, and you can hook up 4 more of those to do 16 colors. So this is all great when you see it printed and done, but what you don't realize when you start printing that is the time frame that it takes. So that's why I only have 3 lions instead of 5 lions. So I started printing these about a week ago, and the silver parts printed in a whole tray in about 3 hours, 3.5 hours. Super fast printer, amazing. But it prints that same speed for each color, but then it has to pause to pull out the filament, put in a new filament, spit out some of that filament, and then start printing again. And if you got 4 different colors on a single layer, you can basically triple that time frame. So that lion, just the full colored parts took 2.5 days to just print that one lion. So that's where we're at. It's great, and hopefully we can get even faster with the printing process. Once it comes out, but it's only been out for like maybe 2 years now.
The Bamboo X1 came out, I think, almost 2 years, yeah.
Yeah.
You said it took 2.5 days to print that? It would have taken about 2.5 hours to result 1 color.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Adding colors, yeah.
Drastically changes. So
Yeah.
things to think
and
about.
there are different methods of multicolor. There's the AMS system, that's Bamboo system, where it takes one out and puts another one in. They're called tool changers, like the new Prusa XL.
Yep.
It has different tool heads, meaning you have the main head with the filament in, and instead of taking the filament out and putting in a different one, you have 5 heads parked in the back. And depending on what color you want, you just bring in a different head.
Does it change the time at all?
It changes time, it adds virtually nothing. Virtually nothing, because it doesn't have to bring filament out, it doesn't have to pull it in, it doesn't need to purge, it doesn't need to, you don't waste any filaments with the color transition, which is a
And it's
lot of
also
things.
3 times the price.
And it's, yeah, that starts at, I think, $2,500 for a single extruder, and then each additional head is something like $250.
Yeah. It can get expensive. So, but there's also another level of that in resin printing, which is something I'm getting into. Last year, I showed off a few of these that were printed in full color. I had them on display, if you guys were here last year, in the third-party casing in a little display where they were all like fighting each other. So those were all printed on a new printer out there called a Mimaki printer. And the cheap printer, it only has an 8-inch by 8-inch build plate, and it takes 3 times longer than their big printer to print it. That one's $50,000, and that's the cheap printer.
It's nothing
So-
for an industrial printer.
Yeah, so if you want the industrial printer of their same product, it's $200,000. So it is something I was trying to get last year and couldn't get funding for it. So now I'm doing a 3D scanning service to help pay for that. So, but the quality you can get out of it is just insane, ridiculous. Full color. Like I have this little guy. It's a head that was, from a real person that was 3D scanned with all of the shade tones. The differences in his hair and colors in his face and everything, and printed just like that. It looks like I hold it in my hand, and it looks like just a little mini human in my hand. It's crazy. So that's next level. Hopefully, in the next probably 10 years, we'll start seeing that technology coming into this desktop world, and that's what I'm pushing for.
When we were first talking about this panel, I remember you asking me and saying, hey, do you think it's possible to print something with just a printer that would look as well as a hand-painted miniature? And I hand-paint some miniatures for Warhammer, so I said, no way could you ever replace me, the artist, and make it look as good with all the skin tones. And you said, give me a moment. And you brought it out, and I could not believe my eyes. The variation of shades, the little veins, it was spectacular.
Next
Absolutely
level.
mind-blowing. Yeah.
Next level. It's not going to replace the painters, because painters are very few and far between as it is, and it's a specialized craft that you can only get. There's certain things that you can only do through paint that you can't do through the printing. Maybe we'll get there someday, but I think right now, and then the ability to be able to get that printer is slim to none. Shapeways has those printers. So if you have something that you've painted in one of your programs and you need it printed, you can go to Shapeways, and they will require your firstborn and probably your right leg.
No. They changed it. Now it's just your left leg.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, good, because I don't have any feeling left in my right leg anyway. So,
Well, then that's...
so I've dabbled a lot in cosplay. So I want you to talk about some of these things that you got on the table here.
Yeah.
Some of them you designed.
Yes. Some
Okay.
of them I designed. As we mentioned, 3D designing and 3D printing are 100% separate skills. They go hand in hand. It is very helpful. A lot of these were not designed by me. Most of them were designed by Nico Industries and a couple privately commissioned through, friends of friends. But most of what I print is cosplay related, whether it's a giant sword or a helmet or a mask.
Tell us about the process of this guy here.
So the Megatron?
Megatron, yeah.
So Beast Wars Megatron, I think I made 2 years ago, the year that we met actually.
Okay.
The year I met you, I made that for, I saw David K was coming, I'm like, all right, I gotta make that. So I made that. I hired someone to design it for me because while I can design, I am not skilled enough or confident in my design for something like this. This was actually, even though the geometry may not seem like it requires it, this was all resin printed. To get that super crisp detail, minimal sanding.
Is it heavy?
It's heavy. It's resin has the density, roughly the density of ice or water.
It's liquid.
Yeah,
Turned into a solid.
Yeah, so it's pretty heavy compared to other helmets I make, which out of plastic, and then sand it down to look just as smooth, but they are much lighter. They take a lot more work to get looking nicely, but they are much lighter.
There are tricks. Mm-hmm. There are tricks that you can use to lighten up the prints.
Half
by
of
hollowing them out.
3D printing is figuring out the tricks.
Yep.
That's all it is.
Exactly.
And keyboard shortcuts.
Lots of shortcuts.
Lots of shortcuts. So what I did with that is once I got it resin printed, with resin you have to do a special washing with alcohol and a special, there's a whole post-processing you have to do because resin is toxic. You need to make it safe to handle through washing and curing it.
How many of you guys have a resin printer out there? Okay.
How many of you
Small
have
number.
adequate ventilation in your resin printer?
Wait, you
Oh,
need
your
that?
hand's going down. Oh, no.
A lot of that has to do with the resins too. My company has their own resin, by the way. If you guys are resin printers out there, you can come talk to me around the floor sometime. One of the big issues that they do is most of these resins are coming from China, and they have no regulations on the chemicals that are made up for these resin printers, and you're just buying them on Amazon, so you don't know what you're getting. Some of them are very toxic, fumes, everything. The best place to go is to find something that they call low odor, because low odor usually helps with the ventilation as well. But one of the things that we've done with our resin is we made it California, like not quite Prop 65 certified, but compliant, that's the term. So Prop 65 compliant, and if any of you guys are Californians, you know what I'm talking about. So that's a great leap and bound from what we have, and but there's limitations on some of the stuff that we can do. Like we can't do these rubber resins that are, somebody was asking me about rubber resins earlier, the F80 from Rezion. Any guys use Rezion? No? Okay. Rezion's a good company. They make some really good stuff. Pretty decent priced depending on the resin that you're getting, and Half the Battle Toys does make comparable stuff. I was set out to make an exclusive resin that works for ball and socket joints. That's how these guys are made. Everything is a ball and socket, so it has to have some flexibility to it and some rigid. What's the word?
Ductility.
Yeah, that one. Sorry. So we set out to do that. Took us about 2 years to figure that out, and then Rezion came out with another product that beat us to the market. But so now we're trying to figure that out. But it's made in the United States, and it's sanctified. So just think about that when you guys are getting into this printing world. Resin printing is a lot of fun. You can do some really cool stuff with it. As you can see some of the details that you get out of these smaller statue figures, and some of the stuff that we printed over here that you made, and then also these guys, you can see the detail on these close up. But that's the main differences. And we were talking about that for a while with FDM printing too, when the only thing that we had was ABS, and now they've come leaps and bounds with PLAs, PLA Plus, stuff that's super like flexible now with PLAs.
I use PETG.
Yep, PETG is a good one. It can clog up your printer pretty well if you don't know what you're doing with it and don't have your settings right, but it is good material. So, what do we got? We got about 30 minutes left. Do you guys have questions? We do have some questions.
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, pleasure seeing you all. Just my question is, have you guys ever made any of these 3D printers and no, that doesn't work? Did you just keep them as a way of, hey, I can do this next time? Or no, you just got rid of them and worked on the next guy?
The printer or the prints?
Yeah.
The prints.
The prints. Yeah, so we have thrown away many prints. One of the things about this printer too is we have this ongoing joke about the poop chute. The poop chute. So this printer has a poop chute, and what it does is that every time it changes out a color, it spits out material into this little chute, and then it goes somewhere. We've all had to design things for it to go into place for it to house that. But
The colostomy bag.
yes, exactly. Yeah. Perfect. So I've now filled an entire box of poop just printing those 3 figures right there. So it's a lot of waste. There are companies out there that offer a way to remake that into new filament. And I was very interested in one that came from Germany, and I watched a YouTube video, and I was like, okay, I'm set. I'm going to get this guy. I'm ready to go. And then he shows me, well, all of this was done, but I also have this shredder over here that cost me $2,000, and I have this heat press over here that cost me $2,000, and all of these other things. And I'm like, okay, so that was $600, but he didn't talk about all the rest until the end of the video. Of course, you know, that's the way YouTube goes. So, but yeah, so that's a good question. Thank you. Did I answer it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello. So comparatively with FLM and then resin, which one's usually beginner friendly both in practice and in price?
In practice, FDM is probably the easiest to get started with, especially they now have an entry-level printer that's about $300 that has all of the same like systems with auto leveling and everything else to get started with. And then it's just a matter of you figuring out the models and you know, the print settings and different things like that. Resin can be entry level if you're willing to get your hands dirty.
Literally.
Basically.
Literally.
Literally get your hands dirty, because it is a liquid resin. You have to take precautions. You have to use gloves, masks, things like that. You have to clean it with isopropyl alcohol or denatured alcohol is what I use. And then they have to be post-cured in a process through that. So there's a little bit more to do with it, but if you've already figured out 3D printing through FDM, then I highly suggest moving on to that as like the next level.
Hi.
Hi.
I just want to make sure this is a good distance. All right. Are there any updates on the Earth Wars Hiss Soundwave tank? And are there any other plans for other Earth Wars characters like the Sentius twins?
So, yes, the Hiss tank is in process now. I have a lot on my plate for design, and so it's kind of been slowly taking the back burner. I actually tried to print, so this is a good segue into an announcement that I was going to make. So you guys have all seen, so how many of you guys have seen the promo images for the Hiss sound take, and also the Hound Vamp figure that I brought in a couple years ago? Let's get a show of hands how many people have seen that. Okay, 5 of you, great. So half the Battle Toys was started because I wanted to do crossover vehicles from G.I. Joe and Transformers. So I have come up with, I have Hound that turns into the Vamp from G.I. Joe, and then I have Soundwave that turns into the Hiss tank that is being worked on right now. Originally, my plan was to do this in masterpiece size with making micro G.I. Joe figures to go along with it. And I have now pivoted a little bit thanks to a couple of people that I interviewed last week. So be prepared to accept those as digital files for the classified series. So that will be coming out. I'll have, keep an eye on my website because I didn't have time to print one. Hound is literally sitting in the print file right now, ready to print when I get home, and it was going to take like 5 days to print it, and I'm like, okay, forget it, I gotta wait. So.
And any other plans for Skywarp Night Raven and Jetfire Sky Striker? And were you inspired to do these based on the trailer, the Earth Wars trailer that revealed the G.I. Joe crossover?
I was not, actually. And I'm trying to do something different than Hasbro because they like to do their own thing, and I like to do mine. So, like, you guys have all seen the Hiss Wave Megatron, right? Yeah. Yes, exactly. So, I don't want to do that. I want to take my time with it. I've already been working on this project for 3+ years. So when they come out, they're going to be fantastic, and they're going to be ready for digital download as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. But I do have plans.
Okay, with the Sentius ones?
I know that we'll definitely have an F-14, because they did have those in G.I. Joe. I'm working on the, what was the next one on my list, was Springer. So I've got some plans for that. I think we're starting with the Dragonfly, and then I'm working on what the other alt boat's going to be right now.
I wish you a lot of luck on those.
Thank you.
Hello. I wanted to know, you guys have probably seen this, but people online will make like their own custom parts and upgrade kits for the Hasbro products, and I want to know, do you guys think that that's a positive or negative? Because I know some people think that Hasbro should be able to make all of these parts, like there's like gap fillers and stuff. There shouldn't be any hollow parts. But do you think that it's like a positive or a negative? Because it could also like help fans use creativity to solve
That's what
problems.
keeps us in business.
Yeah.
We're third party. I mean, that's what keeps us in business.
We make plastic things, so when companies like Hasbro don't use enough plastic, that's where we come in.
Yeah. So yeah, it is a good question, and I think in the world of what we're doing, like, I wish that Hasbro would actually work with a lot of these designers and sanction it instead of fight against us, because we're making parts for a product that's already made by Hasbro, and so they've already got your money. Now we get to get the other half of your money.
All right, thank you.
I mean, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that too.
Hi there.
Thank you.
So let's say that I was going to print like functional parts for a transformer, like say an arm with a hinge joint for an elbow, maybe something with a few transformation joints. Do you know of a good resin that can withstand the forces that would be exerted upon that joint? I've got some Syfritt resin that I was going to try, but I want to hear y'all's opinion.
Yeah, so there's this cool resin that's HBT 3D, and it's called NanoFlex.
NanoFlex.
You can find that on eBay. That's my resin. So I have two different kinds. I have a NanoFlex and a NanoTough. The tough resin works really good for rigid parts that you're going to, say you're using a pivot joint and you're going to put a pin in it. Works great for that. If you need a ball and socket joint where it has to have some flex, the NanoFlex works really good for that.
Okay, NanoFlex
I haven't
and
used your
NanoTough.
resin yet, but for Syfritt, which
Yeah.
is what I typically use, Syfritt Blue is
Mixed.
mixed. It's very tricky to work with. You have to mix it in, play with the ratios with typically their fast resin. But I actually really like their engineering resin. It's a bit softer. You can actually tap it. It is not nearly as brittle as fast ABS-like, or even blue is kind of brittle. It's strong, but it's brittle. But the engineering has just that slight bit of ductility and deformation to it, where it does accept things that snap together, or ratchet joints that will. There's quite a bit of force that goes into very small features in a ratchet joint, and the engineering resin I've used for ratchets, those work.
Do you use it solely, or do you mix it?
No. It depends on the part. Same with their tenacious. Like you can.
That's what I use. Tenacious and blue together.
Tenacious and blue. I haven't done that. I've done tenacious and fast. I use those for miniatures. For thin features, if you add flex to it, things won't break.
So tenacious from Syfritt is a rubberish type material. It's super flexible. It's not actually rubber, but it's very flexible. And then blue is supposed to be kind of their engineering resin, but they switched to a different one.
No, they have their engineering one as separate.
Yeah.
That thing is called Builds.
Okay.
And their
Blue started out
I
as
think-
their engineering resin.
No, it didn't start out as their engineering resin. It started out, maybe it did, maybe I'm wrong. But I think they were comparing it to nylon.
Yeah,
blue.
okay.
They're comparing that to nylon, and they were advertising Builds as here's what you use when you want to screw parts together.
Yeah. But the bottom line of what we're getting to is there's plenty of other resins out there, but there's a formulation that you have to figure out on your own. Like we've all tested a billion things and broke a million parts, thrown them all away, just to figure out what works. And all I did with my resins is I work with a company in Vegas that has a flexible resin and a rigid resin, and then a process of mixing those two together became my resins.
So, thank you.
Yeah.
We're staying on the resin topic for a minute here. What do you recommend that's clear?
Ooh.
Do you do clear resins? Let's start
Yes,
there.
I also do clear, yes. So right now we offer clear and gray. And the clear is not quite optically clear, but Syfritt just came out with an optically clear resin that seems to work pretty well. I don't know about its durability, but...
I've tried a little bit. I haven't played around too much with it, but it is very clear. But with any clear resin, you do need to you do have to treat it. With UV light, it will often yellow over time. A very easy trick to that is to literally brush over the part or dip it into resin again after you post-cure it, and then re-cure it again. You have to play with the technique for that because that does lose detail. It fills in smaller features. But that really does preserve the optically clear and prevents discoloration.
If you want to keep the detail, though, you can use a clear acrylic spray that has a UV protectant in it.
Yeah.
Good to know. Just one other quick thing. I've been running into a lot of warping issues with just flat pieces.
Okay.
Still resin-based. Any recommendations there?
If it's warping, there's a good chance that you are over-curing it in your process, so you probably have to mess around with your settings a bit.
Temperature is also a big thing. The resin itself should be ideally between 25 and 30 degrees Celsius. If it's too cold, it becomes more viscous, and the suction really is amplified.
So keeping it, if you're doing it inside, that's the best because you can keep it at a room temperature. If you're doing this in a garage or something, it's best to get like a space heater or something that you can keep kind of blowing towards your printers to keep it at a good level.
You can even get small heaters that you put inside the printer, which is what I do. And then I got it's a simple temperature sensor, so it will shut off when it reaches over 35 Celsius.
Similar to the heated beds on a FDM printer.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah. We got about five minutes left.
Okay, make this real quick. Have you guys had any experience of 3D printing like any diorama pieces with either 3D plastic or 3D resin?
Absolutely. And are you talking for Transformer stuff?
Transformers, tabletop, whatever.
So tabletop resin is still the way to go for most of that. I've printed off a huge battleship, like an airship for a guy, and I did resin printing for that, and I think it was like 100 parts. And then when it came to printing the balloon for it, I did that in FDM because it's just such a huge part that. Plus, I also have a belt printer, and I wanted to test that out.
Those are fun.
Nice. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
This isn't too much of a technical question, but what would you say has been your favorite print for the past few years or as of this current year?
Why don't you guys answer that?
It's always a hard
I
question.
print all of my own stuff, so it's harder for me to answer.
It's like asking who's your favorite superhero. You can give the answer that first comes into your head or the ones you connect with, but you really like a whole bunch of them. I made a Groot statue, part of a diorama that I decided to only print the Groot for by Wicked 3D, who makes amazing designs. That one was the first time I tried really detailed painting, and I really like the way that turned out. 2 foot tall Groot statue.
How about you guys?
Mine is TFcon. Fell in love with this guy.
That thing's awesome.
Yeah, just the colors, like.
I'm gonna have to get that.
A 4 foot long tail. I just think he's like a badass bad guy.
I don't think I'm gonna make it that big though.
Yeah. So normally it's 2 feet tall, the original size.
Okay.
I
can deal with that.
Yeah.
For any 3D model, you can scale it up or down within reason, or without reason.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One last question. Afterwards, can we go up and take pictures of the things you're 3D printing?
Yes. Yeah, I was about to announce that. So, since we only have about 5 minutes left, let's conclude the panel and give you guys an opportunity to come up and take some pictures and talk to us outside of it. We're going to be breaking this down for the next guys that are coming in for a podcast panel. But thank you, everybody.
Big round of applause, everyone.
Thank you. and enjoy your con.